Have you ever felt it? The quiet, chilling realization that the clearer you see the world, the less you belong in it. It's the loneliness that hits not when you are physically alone, but when you are surrounded by people, at a family dinner, in a crowded bar, or even in a professional meeting, and you realize the language they speak, the assumptions they hold, the comfort they crave. It is fundamentally foreign to you. You see the machinery behind the illusion, and that sight is an isolating, unbearable curse. This isn't just a personal failing. This is a deep, psychological current that has swept aside every profound thinker in history, from Socrates to Tesla. The deeper your insight, the stronger the wind of resistance. The more complex your truth, the more desperately the world craves your silence. For centuries, philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer, a man who felt the cold sting of isolation more keenly than most, tried to diagnose this affliction. He believed that intelligence was not a gift of fortune, but a painful expansion of awareness that separates you from the simple, comfortable masses. But why? Why does society fear the intellect more than it fears a physical threat, a financial loss, or a charismatic fraud? The answer lies in a single, devastating concept. Clarity is a mirror, and most people, above all else, fear the reflection of their own intellectual limitations. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes charting this ancient conflict. We'll dive into the neuroscience of fear, the brutal philosophy of the will, and the modern digital systems built to reward superficiality and punish your depth. And most importantly, we will find the solace in the curse, the true unbroken peace that comes only when you stop seeking acceptance and start embracing your clarity. To understand rejection, we must understand the mind doing the rejecting. It's not about hostility, it's about survival. Psychologists refer to a phenomenon called cognitive ease. Your brain, as a purely efficient energy user, prefers things to be simple, familiar, and unambiguous. When you encounter a complicated mathematical problem, a nuanced political theory, or a deeply insightful philosophical argument, your brain registers it as difficult. This difficulty triggers a tiny primal alarm, a signal that says, "This requires effort. This is a threat to my mental comfort." The highly intelligent person, the deep thinker, naturally introduces complexity, nuance, and unsettling questions into conversation. Think about the difference between talking about the weather and discussing the existential purpose of the cosmos. The first requires zero effort. The second requires the listener to question their core beliefs and invest mental energy. When confronted with that investment, most people default to resistance. They change the topic, they introduce a simplistic counter-argument, or they label the deep thinker as pretentious, intense, or too much. They choose ease over effort. This resistance is fiercely protected by the ego. The ego is the guardian of our self-perception. When a physically strong person enters the room, your ego says, "He is strong, I am not, but my worth is not defined by my muscles." When an intellectually superior person enters the room, your ego whispers something far more dangerous. They are smarter, which means they see the world more accurately than you do. Your worldview, your sense of self, is fundamentally limited. This is the primal threat. A challenge to your physical safety is alarming, but a challenge to your fundamental understanding of reality is terrifying. Modern neuroscience provides the anatomical proof. Studies on perceived intellectual inferiority show that when an individual feels cognitively outmatched, the amygdala, the brain's ancient fear and threat detection center, becomes highly active. The presence of a truly deep thinker registers in the brain not as a conversation, but as a danger signal, akin to a loud noise or a sudden movement. Why? Because for our tribal ancestors, survival depended not on being right, but on social conformity. Being the smartest person, the one who saw things differently, meant being rejected by the tribe, and rejection meant death. Your brain is still wired for that ancient fear. It values fitting in over standing out. This is the hidden force behind the isolation. It's not that society hates the intelligent person. Society is biologically wired to fear the complexity they represent. And this fear gives rise to the great cultural defense mechanisms, the Dunning-Kruger fortress. The less competent often overestimate their ability, giving them the confidence to aggressively dismiss and argue against the actual expert. The status quo bias. The deep thinker suggests change, progress, or a re-evaluation of current systems. The average mind prefers the comfortable, predictable, and established order, even if it is flawed. The simplification demand. The constant pressure in every conversation to truncate, flatten, and dumb down a complex truth until it becomes a palatable, easy-to-digest soundbite. This brings us to the great philosopher who understood this dynamic better than anyone, Arthur Schopenhauer. He saw the world divided not by wealth or power, but by the fundamental choice between seeking comfort and seeking clarity. Schopenhauer looked at the world and saw a civilization driven by a blind, irrational force. He called it the will. This will is the engine of all human desire. The frantic, ceaseless pursuit of money, sex, status, and pleasure. It is the need to fill the gaping hole of existence with distraction. The masses, according to Schopenhauer, are governed by the will to illusion. They are content. In fact, they demand to live in a comfortable fog of delusion. They need their narratives, their gossip, their simple, immediate pleasures to keep the existential panic at bay. To question those distractions is to be a cruel disruptor. But the deep thinker, the intellectually superior mind, begins to develop a different drive, the will to truth. This is the moment of your intellectual birth, and simultaneously, the moment of your isolation. The will to truth is an insatiable, philosophical hunger to see reality, raw and unvarnished, even if it brings pain. Where the average person sees a beautiful sunny day and feels joy, the deep thinker sees the underlying thermodynamic decay, the existential absurdity of their fleeting existence, and the silent suffering of millions. The very act of seeing clearly removes the protective veil of illusion that makes most people happy. Schopenhauer called this the curse of knowledge. The knowledge, once gained, cannot be put back. You cannot unsee the hollowness of social ritual, the hypocrisy of power, or the fundamental futility of chasing material happiness. This leads to the great divide that defines your social life, the depth to simplicity gap. You crave a discussion on the ethics of AI. They crave an analysis of celebrity gossip. Your mind seeks the eternal. Their mind seeks the immediate. There is no common ground. The futility of desire. You see ambition as a Sisyphean struggle, directed by a blind will. They see it as the only purpose in life. You appear distant, indifferent, or even depressed because the things that excite them are, to you, pathetically small. The social cost of honesty. To survive in the comfortable world, one must engage in polite dishonesty, small talk, and status games. The will to truth makes this impossible. Your honesty is perceived as arrogance, your silence as judgment. Schopenhauer's conclusion was brutal but necessary. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial, because the man who is dependent on his own resources for his happiness is rarely to be envied. He recognized that the price of clarity is a life lived on the fringes. But this realization is also the moment of your greatest strength. It means the pain of loneliness is not a sign that you are flawed, but a sign that your mind is working as it was meant to. It has simply outgrown the confines of the society that fears it. If you feel like an outcast, look to the past. The history of human progress is not a parade of celebrated genius. It is a long, bloody trial of intellectual martyrs. The people we worship today were the dangerous heretics of their time. They were rejected, not because they were wrong, but because they were right too soon. Socrates, the supreme agitator. His crime was not heresy. His crime was asking too many questions. He forced the citizens of Athens to examine their unexamined lives, challenging the comfortable, unearned authority of the politicians and poets. Society didn't want the truth. They wanted their rituals and traditions preserved. What did they do to the man who demanded clarity? They sentenced him to death by poison. His final words were an indictment of their fear. Hypatia of Alexandria, the clarity of science. In a world collapsing into religious dogma, Hypatia was a beacon of pure, rational thought, a mathematician and philosopher who taught scientific reasoning. She represented the light of knowledge in an age of faith. She was not merely disagreed with, she was hunted down and brutally murdered by a mob of religious zealots. Her rejection was swift, violent, and absolute. Her clarity was perceived as the single greatest threat to established power. Galileo Galilei, the uncomfortable fact. His discovery that the Earth revolved around the Sun was not merely a scientific fact. It was a devastating assault on the very center of the social universe. It stripped the Church and humanity of their perceived cosmic importance. The threat was not the telescope, but the intellectual humility the discovery demanded. For this single, undeniable truth, he was forced to recant and lived out his days under house arrest. The message, your truth is irrelevant if it makes the authorities uncomfortable. Alan Turing, the broken pioneer. He was the genius who designed the machine that broke the German Enigma code, a man whose abstract thoughts saved millions of lives and created the foundation for modern computing. Yet society did not honor his intellect. It feared his difference. When his personal life clashed with the arbitrary, simple-minded norms of the time, he was chemically castrated and driven to suicide. His fate proves that society will reward the function of your genius, the war machine, but punish the existence of your humanity, the mirror effect. You are not alone. Your isolation is not a sign of failure. It is a badge of honor worn by every visionary who chose the difficult path of seeing clearly. They were all rejected for the same reason. They possessed a quality that is both essential for progress and terrifying to the present moment. But the greatest irony is that the rejection today is not physical, it is digital. The new battlefield is the algorithm. The digital world is the ultimate manifestation of the will to illusion. It is a system built not for depth, but for engagement. And engagement is maximized by simplicity, outrage, and immediate gratification. The algorithm is a perfect metaphor for the fearful collective brain. It favors cognitive ease on a massive scale. It punishes nuance. You, the deep thinker, create a 30-minute video essay on the nuance of Schopenhauer. You use specific, abstract language. The algorithm struggles to categorize it quickly. It rewards simplification. Your competitor makes a 10-minute video called 5 Stoic Hacks to Get Rich. It uses a single clear promise. It gets immediate clicks. It demands emotional extremism. Thoughtful analysis requires an even temperament. The algorithm rewards outrage, fear, and superficial motivational energy, the easiest, lowest energy emotions to trigger. The content dilemma. Your 30-minute video is a masterpiece of philosophical clarity, but the system that determines whether you get 0 views or 1 million does not care about your clarity. It cares about 2 things: click-through rate, CTR. Does your title and thumbnail compel a click, promising immediate emotional payoff, not intellectual effort? Audience retention. Do viewers stay through the difficult parts, or do they scroll away when the ideas require them to think? The algorithm measures the fear response of the collective. When a viewer scrolls past your deep, unsettling title to click on a bright, simple video about what I eat in a day, that is, the collective choosing ease over effort. It is the will to illusion winning, one click at a time. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to enjoy more similar videos on philosophy and psychology.